They say you have to raise your voice to make a difference, that if you're not loud, you'll be overlooked, pushed to the side. But what if the truth is the exact opposite? The most powerful people aren't shouting to be heard. They're quietly guiding the conversation without ever raising their voice. This idea isn't new. The ancient Stoics understood that true strength isn't in volume, but in calm control and clarity of thought. Today, we're exploring how silence, when used with intention, can transform how others see you, how it helps you earn respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. Let's start with something familiar. You walk into a crowded event, a business meeting, even a casual gathering. Immediately you notice it, the noise. Everyone speaking louder, faster, competing for space in the air. Words collide, voices overlap, opinions clash. The tension. It's not from what's being said. It's from the need to be noticed. It's a performance, not a conversation. But here's the question. Does noise command respect or reveal insecurity? The Stoics answered that long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." In a world constantly pushing you to hustle harder, talk faster, and be louder, there's something revolutionary about being still. Because real power doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't chase attention, it draws it. Now imagine this. You're calm. You sit back. You observe. You don't rush to respond. You don't react impulsively. While others fill the air with noise, you remain grounded. And in your silence, you signal something powerful. Not arrogance, not aloofness, but quiet confidence. You don't need to be noticed. You know you will be. That's not just about tone. It's about identity. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you truly know your worth, you don't feel the need to announce it. You don't compete. You don't perform. You observe, think, wait. And when the noise dies down and the room finally makes space, you speak. And when you do, your words land. Not because they're loud, but because they're measured. Because they're timely. Because they matter. You didn't speak to fill silence. You spoke to fill a gap. And that gap is where influence lives. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." Your silence was action. It showed self-mastery, patience, awareness. While others rushed to be heard, you chose your moment and earned it. This isn't manipulation. This is mastery. Mastery of presence, of perception, of yourself. Because when everyone is driven by impulse, the one who remains composed is the one in control. This isn't about playing games. It's about playing on a level most people never train for. And it's rooted in one simple truth. Restraint isn't weakness. It's discipline. It's clarity. It's focus. Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself." Sometimes that means resisting the urge to join the noise. Just because others feel desperate to prove their worth doesn't mean you have to. The louder the room, the more powerful your silence becomes. The more voices fighting for attention, the more your quiet presence stands out. Respect isn't shouted into existence. It's felt and given to those who carry themselves with quiet assurance. You don't have to declare your value. You show it by how little you chase recognition. When you understand that silence can speak louder than words, you shift how people perceive you without ever raising your voice. So next time you're in that meeting, resist the urge to jump in early. Let the noise unfold. Listen, not just to what's being said, but how it's being said. Read the room. Watch the dynamics. Let people reveal themselves. And then, when the right moment comes, you'll feel it. Speak calmly, clearly, precisely, and watch what happens. Your words will carry weight, not because you shouted, but because you chose your moment. And that moment wasn't taken. It was earned. And when that happens, people start looking at you differently. They lean in. They wait for your insight. You've moved from just another voice in the crowd to a powerful presence in the room. You didn't force it. You didn't sell it. You embodied it. Because there's a rare kind of presence that never begs for the spotlight. You've seen it. At a party, in a meeting, in a high-pressure moment. Everyone's scrambling, talking over each other, trying to impress. And then there's one person, quiet, almost invisible, not chasing attention, too grounded for that. But you feel them. They're not loud. They don't perform. They are present. They don't listen just to reply. They listen to understand. And when they finally speak or act, it's not loud. It's precise, focused, unmistakably intentional. That's not weakness. That's what the Stoics called strategic humility. Power wrapped in patience. Confidence expressed through composure. See, we've been taught to think confidence has a certain look. Big energy, loud voices, fast talk, bold gestures. But real confidence? The kind that doesn't shake under pressure. It's often quiet, still, understated. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need to defend. In fact, the ones making the most noise are usually the ones hiding the most fear. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's why the most quietly confident people aren't chasing applause. They've already made peace with themselves. They're not seeking validation from the room. They are the validation, and that kind of inner stillness. It gives you a freedom most people never touch. Because quiet confidence doesn't beg for attention. It earns respect through presence alone. While everyone else is broadcasting, you're studying. While they push, you position. And when the moment finally arrives, you don't need to raise your voice. You just act, and the room shifts. Think about sports. It's not always the one pounding their chest who changes the game. It's the one who's been watching, reading the field, anticipating the next move. They don't waste energy on showmanship. They conserve it for the strike. The loud ones are easy to predict. The quiet ones, they're dangerous because they're unreadable. Plato said, "Courage is knowing what not to fear." The silent strategist understands this. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's an advantage. It buys you time. It gives you room to move. People drop their guard. They talk too much. And you're taking it all in. Learning the landscape, reading the room, watching for the cracks. Seneca wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." Most never learn that rhythm. They speak just to fill the silence. But you let silence serve you. Restraint isn't passivity. It's control. It's poise with a purpose. It's not about holding back out of fear. It's about holding back because you're aiming with precision. The longer you wait, the sharper your strike. That's not inaction. That's intentional patience. Now think of those who remain still when the world spins in chaos. They're not frozen. They're grounded. They don't panic about being overlooked because they understand how short-lived attention really is. They're building something bigger than the moment. Aristotle said, "Character is revealed when pressure is applied." And there's no greater test of character than staying composed. While everyone else scrambles for recognition, we live in a world obsessed with being seen. Post your wins, list your accolades, convince everyone you're important. But Socrates had a better idea. Be as you wish to seem. Stop performing. Start becoming. Don't tell the world what you're building. Let your results speak for you. Don't fight to be noticed. Focus on being undeniable. Quietly. Strategically. Completely. You don't need to dominate the conversation to own the room. Let others fight for the spotlight. You're not here to impress. You're here to observe, understand, and act. Let them misjudge you. Let them overlook you. That's not your problem. That's your advantage. While they broadcast their plans, you're already moving. While they chase validation, you're building leverage. And when it's time, you won't need to announce anything. You'll just act cleanly, deliberately, decisively, and everything will shift. Not because you forced it, but because your presence made it inevitable. That's not chance. That's design. That's what happens when silence meets strategy. When ego steps back and purpose takes the lead. It starts small. A disagreement, a misunderstanding, even a careless joke. You feel your emotions rise. Your pulse quickens. Your mouth fills with words you're tempted to throw. But you don't, because you've trained for this moment. You breathe. You wait. You think. And when you finally speak, it's not noise. It's impact. They don't listen just to respond. They listen to understand. And when they finally speak, their words don't compete for attention. They cut through the noise, not with volume, but with precision. That's not weakness. That's what the Stoics called strategic humility, power wrapped in patience, confidence expressed in composure. See, we've been taught to equate confidence with spectacle, big energy, loud statements, fast talk. But real confidence, the unshakable kind, it's often quiet. It doesn't brag. It doesn't rush to defend itself. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. In fact, the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's why the truly self-assured don't chase applause. They've already made peace with themselves. They're not seeking approval. They've already given it to themselves. And that kind of self-possession? It's rare. It's often underestimated. But that's its advantage. While others are performing, you're observing. While they're posturing, you're positioning. And when the moment's right, you don't need a spotlight. You simply act. And the room feels the shift. Think about sports. The player who changes the game isn't always the one pounding their chest. It's the one who watches in silence, scanning for patterns, anticipating the next move. They don't force their presence. They wait, and then they strike. Clean, precise, undeniable. The aggressive ones? They're noisy, sure, but also predictable, easy to read. The quiet one? They're dangerous because they're unreadable. Plato said, "Courage is knowing what not to fear." The silent strategist knows. Being underestimated isn't a burden, it's leverage. In life, subtlety works in your favor. When people don't see you coming, you move freely. No pressure, no eyes on you. People open up. They reveal things. And you? You're quietly studying, learning how the room breathes, how people operate, where the cracks are. Seneca once said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." Most people never learn that balance. They speak just to fill the air. But you? You let silence serve you. You use it like a blade. Because restraint isn't passivity, it's precision. Composure isn't about holding back out of fear. It's holding back because you're calculating, waiting. And the longer you wait, the sharper your next move becomes. That's not inaction, it's intentionality. And the ones who stay still while the world rushes by, they aren't frozen, they're grounded. They're not afraid of being overlooked, because they're building something that doesn't need constant validation, something stronger, something lasting. Aristotle said, "Character is revealed when pressure is applied." And what better test of character than staying grounded when everyone else is scrambling for attention? We live in a culture obsessed with being seen. Announce your wins, list your accolades, prove your value. But Socrates had a better idea. Be as you wish to seem. Stop performing. Start becoming. Don't tell the world what you're building. Let your results speak. Don't fight to be noticed. Focus on being undeniable. Quietly, strategically, fully. You don't need to dominate a conversation to own a room. Let others chase the mic. You're not on trial. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to understand the terrain, to watch plays unfold. And when it's time, you move. No noise, no announcement, just clarity, just impact. Let them underestimate you. Let them misread you. That's not your burden. That's your edge. While they're broadcasting their plans, you're already executing. While they seek validation, you're building leverage. And when it's time to act, you don't need permission. You do it, cleanly, powerfully, quietly. And when that moment hits, everything shifts, not because you demanded it, but because your presence commanded it. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's design. That's what happens when silence meets strategy, when ego steps aside and purpose takes the lead. When you stop trying to look powerful and start being effective. Because when action is clear, there's no room for dithering. Don't perform. Don't preach. Don't plan endlessly. Act. Let's simplify it. Imagine you're holding a dry stick in your hands. Push it gently, it bends. Hesitate, apply uneven pressure, it resists. Snap back, even sting you. But one clean, decisive strike, it breaks instantly. No drama, no delay. That's the metaphor for effective action. Not hints, hits, not motion, momentum, not noise, precision. And yet, how often do we play small? Not because we lack the skill, but because we fear being too bold, too fast, too seen. Especially in environments like work, where people constantly talk about what they're going to do. Previewing ideas, signaling drive. But movement without direction? That's not impressive. It's exhausting. If you want to separate yourself, stop announcing your next move. Take it. Build your vision in silence. Refine it while others debate theirs. Then, when you reveal what you've been working on, let it be so complete, so exact. It ends the conversation, not because you spoke more, but because you delivered more. This isn't about being reckless. Decisive action isn't impulsive. It's deliberate, thought through, but not overthought. Because over-planning becomes a comfort zone. It feels productive, but it's just procrastination with better PR. Socrates said, "The beginning of wisdom lies in defining your terms. So define your target, get clear, but then begin." Clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from doing. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they hesitate. They second guess. They get lost in what if instead of building what's next. That's where Stoicism becomes more than a philosophy. It becomes movement. Seneca warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." So ask yourself, how many doors have you left unopened, waiting for perfect timing? How many moments have passed because you wanted a sign, a guarantee, a crowd cheering you forward? Meanwhile, someone else moved, maybe with less talent, but with more intention, and they claimed the space you hesitated over. Plato said, "The beginning is the most important part of the work. Not the planning, not the promising, the beginning. Because once you start, you're already different. Most never do. They tinker, they talk, they tweak, but they don't launch. That's why the world respects results, not intentions. When you act with certainty, you don't need to defend your choices. Your work defends itself. So stop circling. Pick one thing, a project, a decision, a shift. One thing you've been dancing around. Ask yourself, what's holding you back? Fear? Doubt? The myth of the right time? Step back. Design a strategy. Refine it in silence. Build it like no one's watching. And when the moment comes, don't creep toward it. Strike, director, clean, unapologetic, no more half steps, no more waiting to feel ready. You're not supposed to feel ready. You're supposed to move anyway. And once you do, once you lead with that kind of clarity, hesitation doesn't stand a chance. There's a certain weight in silence, a kind of presence that can't be faked. Not the silence of awkwardness, not the discomfort of not knowing what to say. This is different. This is deliberate, focused, the kind of silence that creates space, tension, curiosity, the kind that shifts a room without saying a word. That's power. Most of us aren't taught to trust it. We're conditioned to respond, to fill space, to react fast. Silence feels like uncertainty. We panic when people go quiet. We assume the worst. We rush to cover the gap, but silence isn't weakness, it's control. And the Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You don't need to match chaos with chaos. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to explain your every move. Let your stillness speak for you. Let your restraint carry weight. Let your silence build tension. Because when you finally move, they'll feel it. Not because you forced it, but because it was inevitable. And what is silence, if not the ultimate act of being unlike the world? The world yells. The world defends. The world fights to be heard. But the wise, they wait. They choose. Think about that in time you texted something real. A little raw. A little exposed. And then, nothing. Minutes turned into hours. And your mind turned into a maze. What are they thinking? Did I mess up? Should I have said less? Or more? That space between your message and their response, that's where silence shows its power. Because in that gap, the imagination runs wild. In that stillness, more is revealed than words could ever uncover. Controlled silence shifts the spotlight. Suddenly, they're not analyzing you. They're confronting themselves, their assumptions, their intentions. And you're just choosing not to play the game. In negotiation, this kind of silence becomes a tactical edge. Most people speak too soon, accept too quickly, rush to fill the discomfort. But you wait. You let your pause carry weight. You let stillness stir uncertainty. That pause, it isn't indecision, it's leverage. It forces the other person to fill in the blanks. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." Silence is that secret order. It reorganizes the dynamic without confrontation. It reveals what rushing never could. And yes, it takes strength. Because this isn't about being quiet. It's about choosing what not to say. That requires patience, discipline, awareness. Aristotle said patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. And silence, when intentional, is patience in motion. It's discipline on display. Especially in a culture where everyone is expected to react, to comment, to post, to perform. Choosing not to. That's rare. And what's rare becomes respected. When you hold your response, especially when provoked, you shift from reactive to strategic. Most people operate on reflex. They speak as soon as they feel. But the Stoics, they knew better. Strength isn't found in expression. It's found in restraint. Strength is calm. It's the ability to watch without being pulled in. It's the decision to listen when everything inside you wants to speak. And nothing unsettles others more than a silence that feels intentional. Socrates said, "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." That's what silence does. It makes people think, deeply, uncomfortably, honestly. You don't need to respond to every message. You don't need to justify yourself in every group chat. You don't need to defend every misunderstanding. Let people wonder. Let your silence stretch the distance between their assumption and your truth. Because what's rare, becomes respected. And when you choose not to speak, not to react, not to explain, you're telling the world, my energy isn't free. My thoughts aren't cheap. My presence must be earned. Not every situation needs your voice. Some just need your stillness. Let others perform. Let them chase attention. You command it through presence. Because silence, when it's not fear but focus, isn't absence. It's presence amplified. It doesn't say, I have nothing to offer. It says, I know exactly what I'm worth, and I don't give it away lightly. It doesn't ask for attention. It earns it through restraint, through intention, through the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am. I know what I carry, and I don't need noise to prove it. In a world addicted to volume, your silence can be your greatest weapon. Move with calm, speak with clarity, and let your presence do what words never could. Thank you for being part of Stoic Journal, where stillness becomes strength and thought becomes power. If this struck a chord, there's another video waiting right there on the screen. Go watch it next. And remember, we'll be here when you're ready for your next moment of clarity.